welcome to the KBIZ Dialogue program. Am I on? Yeah, I'm on. Turn me up, son. Can't hear myself in my headphones. Hey, good morning. Welcome to the KBIZ Dialogue program, broadcasting from the Ottumwa Radio studios in beautiful downtown Ottumwa. I'm Nick Davis. Joined in studio this morning, once again this month, by Blake Smith. He's filling in an open show that I had today. Blake's one of the guests that we can call on last minute and say, hey, get in here.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Blake.
You're welcome. Is this our last show together?
This is our last show together. I promise you, because
emotional.
I've got a full schedule next week.
All right.
Everyone wanted to be on the last week. No one wanted to be on the week before the last week.
Sounds great. Well, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. So thanks for coming in and joining us today. Of course, with Blake, we're talking politics. He is the co-chair of the Wapello County Republican Party. Just for reference, we have invited the Wapello County Democratic Party to come on several times, and I've never gotten a call back from them. Not sure why. But they've been invited, so I just want to put that one out there. Give us a phone call, 684-1240, 684-1240. And Ellis over there is screening our calls today, so he can take your question off the air, or if you'd like, you can come on the air with us and ask your question there. But you no longer have to wait, at least this week and next week. You don't have to wait for a commercial break to call in your question off the air. Ellis can take your questions off the air. Ellis, how are things doing over there?
Not bad, not bad.
I don't think your mic's on.
Oh, God.
I don't know. Maybe it is. I just can't hear you. Well, we'll just keep going.
Ellis, the new mic.
Ellis is the new mic. And I think Blake is probably never going to be invited in on the show again. We'll have to wait and see what happens with that. Blake, plenty of things to talk about on our list today. I want to talk about the condition of the state address. Again, we talked about that a little bit last time you were here. I want to talk about some of the GOP budget priorities and how that plays in with what we heard from the governor on the condition of the state. We need to talk about local races. We've got a couple of Democrats that have announced that they're going to run against Mark Shelgren for the Iowa Senate race. That race coming up, I believe, this year, isn't it?
Yep.
So we need to talk about that. And of course, you, in addition to being the co-chair of the Wapello County Republican Party, you're somewhat of a financial guru here in town. You work for Financial Partners. So we're going to get into a discussion on the local economy as well. For some reason, I wrote condition of the state twice, so I've already got one topic I can cross off there. We're going to talk about traffic cameras, government shutdown, and if we have time, we might even get into a discussion on marijuana. So we're going to get into all of that here on the show. First, Blake, let's talk about local races. Okay, so Senator Shelgren he won election 8 years ago.
Yep.
And probably the closest race in Iowa Senate history.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day it was 13 or 14 votes.
13 or 14 votes.
So it was 11 the night of the election. It went into a recount, and it was after Thanksgiving before the attorneys and everybody settled down. And I think it was either 13 or 14 votes in the end. It was the closest state election in Iowa history.
So that was, a fun night, I'll just say. That was a fun night watching it.
Yeah, it was, and it was because I had been working for Marionette Miller Meeks at the time.
Yep.
And so, Mark Shelgren and I hadn't really connected. I knew him at that point, but that was the first year that Governor Branstad had run again, and it was kind of comical from the outside looking in because Branstad had won. I was in Iowa City with Marionette, and that race didn't turn in her favor, so a little kind of a depressing cloud on that side, but. Here, Mark Shelgren is kind of a nobody, came out of nowhere, and he's looking at the numbers going, I think I won. And he's trying to call, up to the Republican Party in Des Moines, and everybody's having a good time, partying, because the governor just won. It was, a landslide for Republicans that year. And here Mark Shelgren is just shrugging his shoulders going, I think I won, I don't know what to do now. We need to recount. And
that triggers an automatic recount, I believe, that close of a race.
Yeah, finally, I think in the middle of the night, they got a hold of some attorneys, a couple that were with Marionette's campaign as well, and everybody kind of got together real quick and kind of shut down everything until everybody got on the same page.
Yeah, so that was a fun night 8 years ago, and then 4 years ago, of course, running against Steve Siegel, who has announced that he's going to run again. That was another close one, not as close.
No, I think it was...
Wasn't it a couple hundred
300 to 400, something like that, in that range, which is still close in the grand scheme of things.
It's still just a few percentage points.
Right. And that was, that was an interesting one. We all know that, Mark and Steve are not necessarily the best of friends at times.
No.
So from a spectator standpoint, it's fun to watch. So if that's going to be the rematch, I know there's a few other Democrats I believe that have announced.
Mary Stewart being one of them.
Yep, and then another one from Fairfield. I can't remember her name, but.
Yeah. Give us a phone call if you do know their names. I don't have a full list of the candidates in front of me either, and it's not like there's a list on the Secretary of State's website for who else running. So
tips to candidates, radio hosts should know your names.
Yeah, we should know your names. Make sure that we know your names. You should be sending us the media press releases weekly, even though we're not going to run them weekly. You should be sending that out. Just a pro tip to all candidates, Republicans and Democrats out there.
Absolutely.
We need to know your names. Just saying. That being said, so give us a phone call, 684-1240. We're talking about local races right now, and specifically right now we're talking about the Iowa Senate race. Blake, we were both kind of involved 4 years ago, not involved in the race per se, but we were involved in politics, and we were both working in politics at the time. So it was a blast to watch that race. What are you when you think back to that Shelgren-Siegel bar fight, I guess, 4 years ago, what stands out in your mind that you're kind of looking for again this year?
Honestly, just I think the debates. Steve Siegel is an experienced politician. We all know that. Mark Shelgren, he doesn't care what people think. He's going to do what...
Not one bit.
Not even a little. He's going to do what he thinks is right, whether the rest of us thinks it's right or not. And so you take, those two and put them in the same room together. It's always been pretty fun to watch. And I think they both have, the positives and negatives. They both have a track record, which is good and bad, depending on how you look at it. So, yeah, I'm ready for the debate. It got pretty brutal last time on both sides. Yeah. And I think it's, no hold barred this time. I think it's going to be a fist fight.
I think
assuming Siegel gets the nomination.
That's a fair point.
And assuming Mark Shelgren runs. We don't know. I haven't heard one way or another. But, there's a lot of assumptions right now. But, who knows?
Yeah. I believe Senator Shelgren is going to run. And by the way, I assume you're not saying there that when you say that Mark Shelgren doesn't care what people think, I assume you're not saying that he doesn't listen to constituents.
Oh, he listens to constituents. I mean, I worked for him for 3 years, and I didn't mean that. His core beliefs and values, you're not going to change those. Yeah. So that's what I meant by that statement. But he's one of those guys who, if he learns new facts and new data, he will change. I've watched him do it. So
I've seen him change his mind.
Yeah,
three times before breakfast.
Yep.
I have.
Oh, me too.
A lot going on with that race, and we've also got a House race potentially. I've heard from Representative Mary Gaskell, the Democrat that represents Ottumwa. I've heard that she plans to run again. Of course, she had a primary challenge last time.
Yeah.
And won that primary. But there was no Republican to run against her last time.
Nope, there hasn't been a Republican since me, I don't think, in 2012.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, as far as the, the local Republican Party goes, that's something that we're always ambitious, is to be able to put candidates, up for an election. So if there's any Republicans out there who would like to take that race on, feel free to get a hold of me or Trudy Cavanis, and we could talk through that scenario. But yeah, I think the last Democrat primary with her and Jeremy Weller was interesting.
It was that one was fun to watch.
Yeah. Yep.
And especially because we knew at that point that there was not a Republican running, so we knew that whoever won this primary was going to be the next representative of Wapello County.
Yep. And I think it, normally Mary Gaskell's pretty quiet, with her legislative priorities. She doesn't make a lot of noise in the press or anything like that. Yeah. And to have a, young, up-and-coming Democrat challenge her like that, who did make quite a bit of noise locally about what he was willing to do, and for her to hang on as strong as she did was kind of surprising.
I'll agree with that. It was somewhat surprising to me. I expected Jeremy Weller to perform a lot better in that particular race than he did, just because of the name recognition. He was on the Ottumwa City Council. Now, obviously, Representative Gaskell has a lot of name recognition as well. She's been in the Iowa House for a long time. Yeah,
and I think to that point, something that maybe everybody underestimated was her position and her experience there. I know the state party came in her favor. And at that point, she has enough, experience and involvement with the Democrat Party. They don't want to change that out. They know what to expect
She's
from her.
in the leadership.
Yep, she's in the leadership. I don't want to say they've already bought her, but they've invested in her. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? So at that point, you kind of know where the party money is going to go and where that's going to land. The analogy, the devil you know beats the devil you don't.
Yeah.
And I think that really took more of a hold than people expected it to.
I'm waiting for the phone call that says Blake just called all Democrats devils. I'm waiting for that one. 684-1240. Blake, before we get to the commercial break, I just want to ask the quick question. What do you feel about the parties themselves getting involved in the primary races? Should they pick sides in the primaries, or should they just stay out of it at that point?
That's a good question. I think, they have the right to do that if they want to do that. If I could see it, though, from a primary standpoint, take that race into a perfect example. Jeremy Weller's coming in here with, new ideas, what his agenda, and he could look at it and say, well, we always hear we want new people, new candidates in politics, and I step forward and then I get treated like this from the party, and I could see his frustration with that. So do they have the right to do it? Yes. Should they do it? I think it's a matter of that specific race and what the situation is. But I think there's a lot of variables there as far as the leadership goes.
Let's take our first break. When we come back, we are going to get into a discussion on the condition of the state and the governor's budget and how those kind of mesh together. We'll be back right after this. There you get recorded. I know this one starts weird. Alice wasn't aware of this bumper. It's one of my favorites, though. Get some No Doubt in there. We're all sitting in here headbanging. Good morning. Welcome back to the KBIZ Dialogue Program, brought to you in part by the Good Samaritan Society. Visit good-sam.com, good-sam.com. Blake's giving me crap on the commercial break. I didn't call all Democrats the devil.
This is where the media comes in and takes things completely out of context. This is the reason why people don't run for office. Right here. It's your fault, Nick.
It's my fault?
Yep.
Well, I'll take credit for that.
Yep. Go to Texas.
Go to Texas. We're having some fun with Blake Smith here on our last show, me and Blake's last show. I've got another week here on the show, and then I am off to Texas, and I'm going to have a great time down there.
Cowboy hats, vests.
You know what? I looked at the weather this morning, though, and it's actually 5 degrees warmer here than it is where I'm moving today.
That's what you get.
Today. The other day, it was 35 here, 70 there.
Like we talked about the other day, you're going to come back, cowboy hat, vest, cowboy boots, big handlebar mustache.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. No one's going to recognize me.
6-shooter.
Yeah. I've already got that. Welcome back to the KBIZ Dialogue Program. Blake, I want to talk about the governor's condition of the state address and how that meshes with the governor's budget. Because you look at the condition of the state address, and to me, the condition of the state, along with the president's State of the Union address, to me, that's kind of a wish list. You know, this is what we want to do.
Yep, kind of a vision painted.
And then you look at the budget, and then this is what we're actually going to do.
Yeah.
So,
yep.
Not saying that they're up there lying, but it's kind of just like that. It's a wish list, and then the budget. When the budget comes out, here's where we figure out where things are actually going.
Yeah, no, I agree, because at the end of the day, it's the state legislature who's going to make those budget decisions, and then the governor can just, at that point, signature or veto.
Does the Iowa governor have line item on the budget?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. So, and for those that don't know, line item means that the governor can veto individual items on the state budget. So that, and I think Governor Branstad used that here recently.
I think he did a couple times
to close the MHPs. So there's that, but. When we're talking about the budget, have you had a chance to look at the budget yet, the GOP budget, the governor's budget, and really get an idea where those priorities are going to be?
Not in a ton of detail, and to be honest, I think you're right when you say that, the condition of the state was her vision going forward, and that being said, though, I think a lot of the speeches given by the Speaker of the House and the Majority Leader Bill Dix mirrored what she said. I think they're on the same page, which is, the theme that I kept hearing was lower Iowa taxes, try to keep the budget balanced. And those were the two biggest things. I think that, in this economic environment to drastically lower taxes with our budget the way it is. I think that I heard there was going to be a $37 million shortfall. Is you got to be careful. You got to be careful. And I think they've taken corporate tax reform off the table. But, individual income tax reform is still something that they're looking at. And that's something that I hope that they get, because due to federal deductibility, as good as it is to have your federal taxes lower, a lot of times with local taxes, we lose some deductions at that point. So, and since your federal tax rate goes down, your Iowa goes up. Yeah. And that's something. So we almost have to address this. That way it's not a wash for Iowans.
Well, it's been, 30 years since Iowa has really adjusted, or more, 30 years since Iowa has adjusted the tax rates?
Yep, it was sometime in the 80s, I believe.
Yeah.
Mid-80s.
So we're talking almost 40 years now. No, almost 30 years. I'm not doing math today. Let's just stay away from that.
Yep.
But when we look at the budget, and like you mentioned, we are in a budget shortfall. So to me, that doesn't necessarily seem like the right time to think about cutting taxes. I'm not saying let's increase taxes to fill the shortfall. I think that there are probably a lot of places in the state budget where we can cut money.
Yeah, I agree. Tax credits being one of them for businesses, and I think that's something that the governor did say she was going to look at. So, and that's a big thing.
Well, you look at the tax incentives and the economic development incentives that we've given Google, Apple, and Facebook, and that could fill the budget shortfall that we had last year and this year.
Probably. And that's something we kind of talked about this last time I was on. It's something I don't like. I don't like corporate welfare. I understand the situation they're in because other states are going to give these incentives. So what do you do to be competitive? I understand the dilemma, but in the the long-term view, I don't like these tax credits. I don't like giveaways because the small business owner does not get that boon, that advantage, and to have these bigger companies come in, I get dangling the carrot in front of them. I understand it, but we should be moving away from those tax credits and moving to just a more fair system for all, so that small business owner, medium-sized business owner, large business owner can all benefit.
Well, if you're a business owner, and this is the logic how I look at it, if I'm the CEO of Apple and I'm looking at some states, I can take this $200 million tax credit right here, or I could go to another state that has say lower taxes, corporate taxes, lower property taxes, and in the long run, that could save you more than that amount of money.
Yeah,
potentially.
Yeah,
probably maybe not $200 million, but
yeah, I agree, and I think it's it's a balance, because I do think that cutting taxes helps the economy. I do. I understand you have to make the budget though, so I think it's a kind of a gradual process, but just look at the federal level. I mean, look at the amount of economic boom that we've seen since the tax bill's gone through. I mean, it's just, our economy is on fire right now. I mean, big companies are giving bonuses. I know AT&T, Boeing, Wells Fargo, I mean, they're all giving employees bonuses. A couple of the banks.
Walmart giving all of their employees, they're increasing their starting salary.
Yep.
And I do believe that that's going to give all of their employees a raise. Yep. All their current employees.
And investing in more jobs. Walmart's doing that. Amazon's doing that. Bayer is coming back. We just heard yesterday Apple, $350 billion investment, over 200,000 jobs. So, and they're all giving credit to the tax bill.
Yeah.
And, whether you like President Trump or not, what he's done in the last year has been great for the economy, period. And it's not just, I hear it all the time, it's, he's only helping the rich. Everybody here on Main Street, yourself included with a 401k, is seeing perks with this.
My 401k is doing great right now. I just want to say.
And that's not something that's going to go on forever. We know that it goes in cycles. Yeah. But, overall, just watch Fox Business every day or CNN Money, whatever you want, whatever you watch. I mean, you see the amount of.
Well, a perfect example, and I don't want to I don't want to keep interrupting you, but I do. So it's my show.
It's to be expected with you. I understand.
Exactly. A perfect example. I remember it wasn't 2 weeks ago, Blake, that the stock market hit, the Dow Jones hit 25,000 for the first time, or was it the Nasdaq? One of the two. Dow Jones.
Yep.
Dow Jones hit 25,000 for the first time, and they were all sitting there telling, "Oh, this is the first time ever it's been above 25,000." It took, I think it was 3 to 6 months for it to go from 24,000 to 25,000. 2 weeks later, we hit 26,000.
Yeah, it was the quickest, 1,000-point gain, I think, in history. So, and year to date, wow, you
Yeah.
know, by it all, by the S&P, by the Dow. And, you know, I think for at least the next 2 quarters, you know, that's what we're going to see. You know, the number one cause of recession is, you know, a tight Fed.
Mm-hmm.
And right now the Fed is still loose. I think we're going to see probably 3 bumps. It sounds like that's what the economists are predicting, is 3 bumps in interest rates this year. And I think we had 3 or 4 last year. But still, as a whole, interest rates are still low.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's, you know, just going to add to this fire.
And here's what people don't always factor. We're talking all of these new jobs that are being created, and some groups look at the Trump budget and the Trump plan, and they say, well, we're cutting all of this income by cutting the taxes that these corporations are paying, but you're not factoring, like you just said, how many thousands of new jobs is Amazon and Apple and Google investing in, and how much are they going to pay in income taxes?
Well, you're exactly right, and I think this is a way for the CEOs and the big business people to be able to put it out there and say, this is our response to the tax cuts. You know, we're going to give bonuses. We're going to raise wages because you know the media goes around and people go around all the time saying we're all evil, and there are, you know, bad CEOs, sure, but as a whole, they're saying, hey, if we get to keep more of our own money, we're going to reinvest. We're going to reinvest in our people. We're going to reinvest in our products. If we see a economic advantage of having a plant that we have in Europe or wherever, and we bring it back here, we will. You know, we're an American company. That's what we want to do, but we have got to be able to be competitive. So I think this is the, you know, large cap companies' response to the tax bill.
Let's take our long break here, checking with some Radio Iowa News, checking with some livestock markets. We'll be back after this, and I definitely want to get into a discussion on government shutdown. Good morning and welcome back to the KBIZ Dialogue Program. Phone line's still open, 684-1240, 684-1240. Give us a phone call if you've got questions, comments, concerns for Blake Smith. He is the co-chair of the Wapello County Republican Party. Blake, you're going to run again. You ran for the Iowa House a few years ago. I'm just going to ask you. It's our last show here. You going to run again?
So I've been asked this question every year since I ran last time, and my stump answer has always been someday, somewhere.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I'd love to. I worked in politics after I ran for quite a few years, and I kind of stepped away into the private sector. And I'd love to run again. That's what I would rather do. I enjoyed running for office more than I enjoyed working in politics. So, right now
I don't know if that's the thing you want to say on the radio.
Well, I mean, as a candidate, I would much rather be a
candidate
than work for the party or a candidate.
Right. You'd rather be the guy than to be the guy that that's working up there.
Yeah. Right now I'm busy building my business. That's my main priority. But sometime in the future, definitely, I'd love to.
Yeah. So I think that's a probably not this year answer.
Mm-hmm. You got it.
Yeah, there you go. There's our answer. Let's talk government shutdown. So we're talking about the federal government now, and I don't know. I get emails from all sorts of places about this on just about a daily basis now, and to me, I'm confused. How long does anybody in the room know how long it's been since we've had a budget in the federal government versus these continuing resolutions?
I believe it was the 90s.
Yeah.
I believe it was the 90s. I believe because I remember Speaker Gingrich at the time talking about how they finally did it. And I might be wrong on that, but I think it was the 90s.
I thought that was the House's job. Like when they come and they go into session in January, isn't that supposed to be their first job, is to write the budget?
Yeah, it is. And it's in Iowa too. The Iowa Constitution is the same way. So, yeah, this is just, I think, politics at its best. The House passed it last night, it sounds like. I haven't read all the details on it. I think it happened fairly late last night, but so far the Senate has not. It sounds like that the Democrats are tying some, immigration issues to that vote, and so they're kind of in disarray right now, from what I understand.
And from what I heard yesterday, I got an email alert from ABC. Apparently, President Trump was called into a meeting yesterday and informed that the Senate doesn't have the votes.
That could be. That could be. The Senate rules, I think, are a little bit different than the House's.
They're weird.
Yeah, they are weird. And I don't know them well enough to sit here and probably talk intelligently on them, but I know they need a certain amount of Democrat votes to be able to pass, even to get it on the calendar to vote. And that's where they're at now. So I think, are in their very early stages of getting this voted on. So, it's pretty disconcerting. I mean, it's, to go from the highs of passing this tax bill and seeing, the economy doing well to back to bickering like this, and this is where a balanced budget amendment or something needs to be in place. These shutdowns are just ridiculous.
I know that a government shutdown affects a lot of services. It affects people's incomes, retired folks' incomes, Social Security, and all of that is hurt by this. The VA is going to keep running, but it is affected by these government shutdowns. Honestly, am I the only one sitting here saying shut it down at this point? I'm tired of the federal government. Shut it down for a little bit. Let's go without a federal government and see what happens.
Well, I doubt you're the only one who's saying that. Even as a voter, you get that feeling sometimes. You're just like, to heck with it, right? But I think you're exactly right. It affects a lot of people, and it affects the markets. It affects, the economy as a whole. And because these couple hundred of people cannot do their job, we all pay for it, And I know it's on us because we vote these people into office. So this is kind of a reflection of us. But guys, you all need to get in the same room, guys and gals, get in the same room and figure out what you do agree on.
Yeah.
And take it from there, and even if that's a little step forward, figure out what you do agree on, take it from there, come back the next day, figure out a few more things. Don't leave until this is solved. This is ridiculous. This is your job.
You worked in the Iowa Senate for a few years, so you can talk kind of intelligently on compromise, I think. But what happened to compromise? I send our representatives to Washington, and I expect them to compromise to a certain extent. Stand behind your core beliefs, but at some point, you're going to have to sit down, and you're going to have to give something up, and they're going to have to give something up, and we're going to have to come together on this.
Yeah, and I think that's in its own weird way the way it's supposed to work. I mean, the government should be moving slow. When a government moves quickly, it's usually bad, no matter what.
Well, just look at Obamacare.
Yep, and there's quite a few things on both sides of the aisle, but I know in the Iowa Senate, there's so many games played, it was crazy. At the time, the Republicans were in the minority, and if they didn't like something that the Democrats were doing, they would go caucus and they'd order pizza and shut the doors for the night and hang out in their room. And the Democrats did it too. It was a back and forth game, and it's ridiculous.
Well, we saw the same thing in Wisconsin when they had to send the state patrol after the Democratic caucus because they left the state.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that's again one of those situations. They have those policies in place, so these people have to sit there and do their jobs. And just because they're in the same building doesn't mean they're working, though. When I know there was a vote in the Iowa Senate that it went all night. It was into the next morning before anything was decided, and just both sides kept squaring off and going to their corners and not talking to one another. And the rest of the Senate staff had to just sit there and twiddle their thumbs 2-3 o'clock in the morning.
I'm gonna just ask a straightforward question here. Working in the Iowa Senate, did it ever feel like you were working in an elementary school trying to get these kids together and just sit down and talk and figure this out?
Yes, at times. There was many times where you just sit there and go, this is government work at its best. And when I say that, I'm referring to the legislators, because what it comes down to a lot of times is they call them postcard votes. What can we do to set up the other side so we can send a postcard out the next election against them in some fashion? And I would say majority of speeches, majority of some of the votes is exactly that. We're just doing a setup so next election we can say they did or did not do this.
When did governance become all about winning the next election?
I think probably always, but we see a lot more of it now. I think with technology, we can get news instantly from anywhere. I think there is a lot more transparency now. I think there's a lot, back in the day, there was a lot more closed doors, smoke-filled rooms, whatever you want to call it. I think more decisions probably got made back then when when the entire public eye wasn't on you 100% of the time. So I think that has a lot to do with it. I think just the world we live in is so transparent right now.
Let's take our last break. When we come back, do you happen to know, is it tonight that the government runs out of money?
I believe so.
I think it's either tonight or tomorrow night. It's one of the two. But the government's going to run out of money. So be watching the national news today and find out if Congress is going to come together and do anything. We'll be back after this. We're going to talk about traffic cameras. We're going to talk about pot. We'll be back. Your light's on, isn't it?
Never even noticed that there.
You've been in here how many times? You've never noticed that light.
I'm so focused on our conversations that I tune out the rest of the world around me.
I'm not focused on anything. Hey, good morning. Welcome back to the KBIZ Dialogue program, brought to you in part by the Good Samaritan Society. Visit good-sam.com. Phone lines open, 684-1240, 684-1240. Give us a phone call if you've got any questions, comments, concerns. I want to talk about traffic cameras. Ottumwa has one. I don't think anyone ever warned Ellis about that, by the way. We have a speed camera in town. Don't speed. He just gave me a thumbs up.
It'll say new mic on the ticket.
It will. All right, traffic cameras. So there's a couple of bills going before the Iowa legislature right now, and I just printed out this story from Radio Iowa from OK Henderson. There's one bill being put forward by Senator Brad Zahn. He's the Republican from Urbandale, and that would be to ban traffic cameras. And of course, Brad Zahn's tried this for years.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's put this bill up or a similar bill just about every year in the Iowa legislature for probably the last 10 years.
Yeah, that's Senator Zahn's forte. Ban traffic cameras, shut down the Department of Education.
Mm-hmm.
So he walks around thinking about those two things most of the time.
That's
he's a great guy.
He is a great guy, but if you've ever had a conversation with him, Blake's not wrong there. So, and the other bill being put forward by Senator Rich Taylor, he's the Democrat from Mount Pleasant. This bill would allow traffic cameras, but it would direct the money to certain public safety activities, and outside of the city, I believe, directing it to the state. So I guess my question here. I've said it here on the radio many times. I'm in favor of Ottumwa's traffic camera. I think it slows people down. It's still ticketing a lot of people. They just lowered the threshold to get a ticket, by the way. 8 miles an hour in a school zone, 10 miles an hour everywhere else. That's over the speed limit. Ellis is taking notes right now. How much can I speed? 8 miles an hour in a school zone, 10 miles an hour everywhere else. I do think it slows people down, but there are some very serious constitutional questions here.
I totally agree. You have to be able to face your accuser. I think that's one of the big ones. Another one, I think probably what you gain on the side of safety, you lose on the other side. We talked about this a little bit last time. I think that there have been, especially red light cameras, I think there's been a lot of accidents, people slowing down rapidly.
People slamming on their brakes because the light turns yellow and they don't want to get a red light camera.
And then you have a semi that's fully loaded trying to react quickly
and
to that.
That semi can't stop.
Or a motorcycle. We talked about that last time as well. There have been quite a few motorcycle accidents, and I wish we were having this conversation 3 years ago. And I remember sitting in the Senate during this debate, and there was a lot of good stories on both sides. But as a whole, I'm not a fan.
Yeah. Here's another good question. So we talk about, and I'm going to take devil's advocate here for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about the constitutionality of being able to face your accuser. How is this dissimilar to me going and robbing a gas station and getting found guilty because the camera saw me and saw my face? How is this dissimilar to that?
Well, I think that it was Senator Taylor who had a good point that there's very little discretion to it. Mm-hmm. So, probably the age-old example would be there's a medical emergency and I go speeding past this and get to the hospital and then I get a ticket.
Yeah.
And who's to prove that I had a medical emergency? What's the process here? I think that is, a big issue. if I was caught on a camera, a video camera with that, maybe you could say, okay, there's two people in the car, here's the medical records. But again, what's the process? And I think every city has a different process. I think how they collect the money is a different process. And what you don't want it to turn into is just a revenue stream for the city.
I think that's what it has become in some places.
Yep.
I don't think that's what it is here.
And then
don't
also,
get me wrong, they're making money off of it.
Yeah, and a lot of this money, I think it was in maybe it's Cedar Rapids. A lot of this money is just going towards the collection of a out-of-country business, and so it turns to be more of a money grab than a safety issue, and I think that's a big issue as well.
And I think here in Ottumwa, it's like $35 from every ticket goes to this Chicago, Illinois company. So that's if it's the lowest level of ticket, that's roughly half of the ticket is going to Chicago, which I want that money here. I want that money in Ottumwa. I want more cops on the streets doing traffic enforcement, because that's how, when you're pulling someone over, that's how you know this guy's drunk or this guy's stoned out of his mind. And there's other things there, or this guy's got a gun and the back seat's covered in blood.
Yeah.
When you're pulling people over and interacting with people, the traffic camera can't see that. It doesn't know that.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think, here's my honest thought on it, is, is this an issue? Yeah. Is there a lot bigger issues out there in the world? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, I think another argument could be made to be local control. What if Ottumwa wants it? Who's the state to say that they can't have it? So I agree with you. I think, like I said, as a whole, I'm not a fan. But do I understand some of the arguments for them, and could I see where they could work? Yeah. But I do think there's a constitutional question in there. I think there's a lawsuit. Radio personality Simon Conway, I believe, has a lawsuit out right now, and I don't know exactly the basis of what that's under. I just heard that he has one, but it'll be interesting.
I heard that yesterday too.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out in the courts, and that'll probably tell a tale.
I printed this one off this morning. Radio Iowa's OK Henderson posted it a couple of hours ago. A bill to ease the penalty for first-time possession of a small amount of marijuana has cleared a Republican-led subcommittee in the Iowa Senate. Being caught with an amount of pot that's 5 grams or less would be a simple misdemeanor if the bill becomes law. Republican Senator, once again, Brad Zahn of Urbandale, says that kind of youthful indiscretion is penalized too harshly under current law. Is this a step towards legalization in Iowa? If this becomes law?
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
I don't think so. I think it is exactly what it, and maybe this is just because I know Brad Zahn, but I'm not putting words in his mouth, but I think this is exactly what he says it is. For a small crime that, frankly, a lot of young college people are susceptible to. This stuff goes through. It's in the college, areas. It always has been, always is. And to stick with you for the rest of your life is pretty harsh. So I'm fine with it. I kind of like the traffic cameras. I think there's a lot of bigger things to worry about in the world. But yeah, sure.
Oh, Rustin forgot his coat in here. He's been waiting out there in the lobby for an hour, I'm sure. Bye, Rustin. All right. Wow, that was fun. All right.
But no, do I think it's a step to completely legalizing in Iowa? I do not. And I say that just knowing some of the personalities in the state legislature. I don't see it getting that far right now.
Let's talk about the national scene then, because Attorney General Jeff Sessions, I remembered the name.
There you go.
Attorney General Jeff Sessions made a ruling a couple of weeks ago, or a rule change of some sort, that essentially is going to allow federal prosecutors to go after individuals and businesses in states where they have voted, the majority of the people have voted to legalize recreational marijuana. Now, I'm not taking a stance on that one way or the other right now, but I do have a stance on local control.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that if this is what the people want, then it should not be Jeff Sessions who comes in and says, no, you can't do that.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and I disagree with Jeff Sessions. And I believe Trump supports what Jeff Sessions is doing, and I disagree with that as well. If this is something that California wants to do, then they have the right to do it. I mean, it comes down to, I mean, it could be about bubble gum or seatbelts or anything else. But, you know, again, you were exactly right. It's a state issue, and let California deal with it. Let California and the states that surround California work out the, the transportation issues from state to state. And just let them work it out. I mean, that's the way it was supposed to be, right? I mean, each state was kind of its own sovereign state under our flag, and that's the way we should leave it.
And I just brought up this map. States that have legalized recreational use, and we're almost out of time here: California, Nevada, Oregon, Washington, Alaska, obviously Colorado, Maine, Massachusetts, and there are just a ton of other states where medical use has been legalized. And I'm with you. I believe that if this is what the people of those states want, then it's not the federal government's place to step in and say no.
Yep, I agree with you. And to be honest, just personally, at the end of the day, I really don't care.
Yeah.
I just don't. I'm not going to argue with doctors who say it's good for medical use, and I'm not going to argue with people with what they want to do at their house. I'm more interested in how our country's doing economically, and this is very small on my radar, I guess.
Okay. Blake, thanks for coming in today. We've got about 20 seconds left. We got to thank the Good Samaritan Society on Chester Avenue in Ottumwa. In Christ love everyone. To someone, visit good-sam.com, good-sam.com. We've got a good show lined up next week. We've got Connie Wilson coming in. We got the fire chief coming in. We got we got 3 councilmen coming in next week. Council people, because we've got Holly coming in as well. So 3 council persons coming in next week. Thanks for listening to the KBIZ Dialogue program.